We're alive.
We're on. We're on. Good evening, Rabbi Eisenberg. Welcome.
Good evening, David. Nice to see you again back after Yom Tov.
Nice to see you too. I know you've had a busy day today. We're going to touch on that a little bit later.
Absolutely.
Some nice things or some things that resemble signs of normality again.
Well, it's actually that's what I spoke about. I got very emotional at this because of the sense of normality that came through with it. Actually, really, it touched me very, very much.
Well, we'll cover that a little bit later. Let's see if anybody's actually with us. We've got a couple of people. Okay, fantastic. So, should we get started?
Do you want to wait another minute?
Or can
just
wait
give it an
another
introduction.
minute?
Wait another minute. We'll just a minute of small talk to allow people to make their way in.
So you know what I've been looking at? I've actually been looking at the Chava made a joke on the events group earlier, whether or not we were going to be providing everybody with material for building this ark. And if you did actually have to order the materials, it's a lot of stuff, you know.
There's a lot of
It's a real shopping list.
Yeah, you needed I don't know if you had a quantity surveyor. What do you think?
Probably.
Sheila Morris is here. Hi, Sheila.
Good evening, Sheila.
Excellent. We have more people on, so let's get started. I think there'll be more people on now.
Okay, fantastic. So, this week's topic, we decided to try and sort of keep it topical with the changing of the different parshas of the Sedra. So obviously we're coming up now for Noach, which is a fantastic fairy tale almost, if you were to put it in those words, for children. This is like one of the stories out of all the different episodes that are covered in the Bible, in the Tanakh. The one that sticks out, especially for small kids, and for most obvious reasons, is the story of the Ark and the flood. And the reason that it is such a powerful image for children is because it is one of those images that you, with the animals, with God has commanded Noach to take a pair of every animal, basically, a male and a female, effectively. Now, we as adults know the reason for that is that so that they can then carry on the bloodline of all of those species. But as children, it's the most tremendous image. Drawing this big boat, we all do it. It's the first thing you do when you bring it home and you've stuck on all the animals and that's it. You're all done. But in actual fact, behind that story is quite a powerful message. When although it's a very nice fairy tale message for kids, there's a very powerful message there as to what the state of the world was in terms of the people. But very, very quickly, really. So we cover in Bereshis the earth being created. We cover the first humans being created. We cover a little bit of the early history of mankind, and then we very quickly find ourselves at a junction where effectively God decides that what He has created has gone wrong, and it's not the plan that He had intended. And He selects this one guy out of everybody to save, basically to save the future of mankind and the world as it was. And it's an interesting allegory, if you like, that is repeated time and again through the Bible. We have different occasions where God effectively decides to wipe a slate clean. So one of those occasions, in some ways, was the Tower of Babel, when effectively they had social problems, and God decided to bring it all down and spread everybody apart. We had the incident with Avram Avinu and Lot when they were leaving Sodom, where it was decided that town had to be laid to waste. So this is something that comes up time and again, but this really is a global. This was a global plan to completely completely restructure. And you cannot read this story in 2020 in the same fairy tale way that you might have done this time last year. So that opens the subject. So over to you, Rabbi.
Okay, so it's interesting. So I'll start with what happened today, and then we'll move on from there. So today I had a wedding, and I'd like to start first of all by wishing Mazel Tov to Salman Nissim and to Lisa Binder Ney Cohen, now also Nissim. So Dr. David Cohen, the dentist's daughter, got married today at a very small ceremony, in a private ceremony in the Midland Hotel with only 15 people. So it was, everything was done correctly and according to the law, etc., and they wouldn't have allowed it any other way. And it was very interesting. And what really happened, and this is what I was saying before to you, what happened on that evening, and it wasn't even, happened in the afternoon, was very, very strange because, the band was playing, or it wasn't a band, it was really just there was a singer and there was Asaf who played on the piano, and in walked the Kala. And I spoke yesterday also about the fact that I've been now in my job for 10 years. So I've seen plenty of weddings. I've seen plenty of bar mitzvahs. Oh, there we go. I remember.
Now that in the background, I'm going to just remove me from the picture for a minute.
That's the Shrubs.
That's the Shrubs Ark that we had built.
Famous one.
Phil Morrison commissioned it together with Chava Rosenzweig and Andrew Burns.
And
every
Paul
year they were.
Sorry. And Paul built it.
Yeah, fantastic.
It made actually very famous because this ark made it into Mishpacha magazine. The year after the first Shabbos project, they got in touch with me, and I wrote an article about Shabbos project in Manchester. And the picture that we had at the Hilton Suite with the ark in the background was one of the feature pictures in that article, read by tens of thousands of Jews all around the world. Yeah. Let's have a look at that ark. Remove us for a second. Let's just look at that.
I'm just going to remove us both. One sec. There we go. We're back.
That was some Shabbat UK, by the way. The first Shabbat UK was something else. That was really something else. It was just unbelievable.
It was a lot of fond memories from.
Fond memories. It's 6 years ago, and it's strange because my wife said to me, when we ever come out of this Corona, we have to make the Shabbat UK of Shabbat UKs.
Yeah, and I think, do you know what? We got very what's the word? Jaded almost with Shabbat UK because everybody said, oh, they were fed up with it. It wasn't the first one. Now you'd kill for a bit of a Shabbat UK because it really is having everybody together in one room.
I'd even kill for a regular Shrubs Kiddush. And I'm not such a big fan.
Oh, come on, it's not that bad.
It's worse.
So sorry, I interrupted.
We're getting into that.
Yeah.
And as I said yesterday at the Bar Mitzvah, we had the Bar Mitzvah of Joshua Rich yesterday. So wish them Mazel Tov as well, to Darren and to Lana and to the whole families, to the Fisher families and the Rich families. And I said, I've been in the shul now for 10 years. I've seen lots of bar mitzvahs, and Baruch Hashem, I've also seen lots of weddings. And I can, whether it's honestly or sadly, whatever, you see a lot of weddings, and like you said, you get a little bit jaded. It loses. It's still always special to be at a wedding, but the emotion might not be as strong, as amazing, as heartfelt as it was maybe early on. And what happened was the Kala walked in today, and I got all emotional. I got all choked up, and I realized it wasn't so much because I have this tremendous relationship with Kala's family and with the Kala personally, because she's been living in London for many years, and whilst I like her very much as a person, but I've had better relationships with many Chassanim than I have with her, and yet this really got to me because it was this oasis of normality within a world gone mad. It felt like the last real wedding I went to was in Israel. My nephew got married. It was a family wedding. It was in February last year. And the whole family, we all went. We got very, very cheap tickets, and we went. It was just the most amazing thing that we were all able to go to Eretz Yisrael and to be together at that family wedding. And that's the last big wedding that I've been to. And this wasn't a big wedding, as I said. This was done within the rules. But because it's so unheard of today to have a wedding, it felt like I was in some kind of ark in this maelstrom that was going on outside. And I think the idea of building an ark, and that's what it really became, the idea of the ark being a place of serenity, the ark being a place of security, the ark being a place where you can go, where you can feel safe and away from everything else. I think that's maybe the parallels that I wanted to speak about today, and building an ark within our own lives, and we'll discuss different arks that we need to build in our lives, and the parallels with the story of Noah and the flood. Because there is a flood going on out there. I think starting with Corona, and we'll speak about other things as well, but starting with Corona, you need to find some sense of normalcy in your life. I don't know what it is, and everybody has it. And so when I finished there, I actually had a meeting today. Hi, Sharon, listening from the M1. I hope you don't have too much traffic. Yeah, but after the wedding, I had something I needed to discuss with Rabbi Walker, and so we met in his garden. Now it seems to be that garden meetings are allowed, so we met in his garden, socially distanced, etc. And I spoke to him. And when I left, I said to him, I said, Daniel, it's been months since the two of us have actually gotten together and spoken like mentioned. Yeah. Because of the lockdown, because of everything else. And even though we might have spoken on the phone and we might have actually spoken via Zoom or via StreamYard or any of these other things, the bottom line is nothing beats face-to-face, sitting across from each other contact. There's nothing like it. And we had that. I had that today, and I walked away and I said, I feel just so much better for the fact that I've seen you in person, and I spent over an hour speaking to you, and I was able to sort of discuss my issues, and you were able to sort of give me an idea, and you were able to discuss back. And just that normality within our lives is really, really important. Because when the world is so crazy out there, and it's not that the world is crazy as such, but what's going on in the world today with Corona and everything, it is crazy. And it's something that we can't, on the one hand, we can't ignore, but on the other hand, if we only create a Corona reality for ourselves and don't find a way to somehow find an arc within our lives to create some kind of normalcy, then we're going to go sugar from it. Do you not find that?
No, absolutely. And I think that if you to look at the state of the world, it's interesting, look at the state of the world just pre-flood in the Bible. And then you compare the world today. Obviously, first of all, we've got far many more people on Earth, overcrowding our little planet. But we're still struggling for resources and everything else that's going on at the best of times. But you've also got at the moment there just seems to be this climate of almost like a climate of fear, because people are worried about Corona. Yeah. People are worried about health.
They're worried about their jobs.
People are worried about their jobs, the economy,
the finances.
But politically as well, we seem to be in one of those times where I think the extreme fringes of both political extremes of the spectrum seem to be what is making most of the noise. And what we learn from history is that when that happens, good things very rarely come of that, where you've got a very strong right and a very strong left, but you've not got much of a balanced middle. And so at the moment, yes, it does feel a little bit up in the air, like it could be anybody's. We've got the election that's coming up in America.
Very scary thought, that what's going on over there.
Unbelievable. You've got a state of political unrest in Israel, which we here in the diaspora don't talk about enough necessarily. We'll talk about
the hatred that's going on there is crazy. I think the right and the left has just gone absolutely mishuggah.
Yeah. And so I think when you look at it, the world does seem like a bit of a crazy place, and sometimes you do need to hit pause. And in some ways, ironically, Corona gave us in the early days, it forced us to build an ark within our homes, because all of a sudden we were that family that needed to shield away from everybody else. So okay, I didn't have 2 elephants in here, but I had 3 kids who were eating everything instead. But that's Sheila Morris would like us to stay on topic.
I think we are on topic. We're building an ark.
I'm bang on topic. Sheila, if you want to stay a little bit more on topic, you will need some 6x4 wood and a hammer and a few nails. But we'll get there. But no, seriously, Corona, I think, forced a lot of people to shield. And I think that is effectively what the ark was all about. But you're right. At the end of the story with the ark, you have that search for normalcy. And the whole, this imagery of the rainbow that really comes out of this entire story, it is the same rainbow that we've been using throughout the story of Corona as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, that parallel. I never even thought of it. But I think more than that, when you look at the search for normalcy as in coming out of the ark, and Noah goes ahead and he plants a vineyard. In a way, in a search for where's a good pub. It almost feels like that.
Yeah.
Have I had a year from hell? I need a drink. And it feels almost on the one hand like the most normal thing to do. On the other hand, and that's why Noah gets so chastised for it, is that yes, you're searching for some normalcy, but I think that was a little bit too far over. You could have searched for something else. I mean, ask yourself the question. It'd be an interesting question to ask anybody here, and I wonder if anybody would like to put in a comment on the comments. When Corona ends and you come out of the ark, what's the first thing that you want to do? The first thing that you will allow yourself, you've made this ark, you've created whatever it is. I'm not going to shul, or I'm not meeting with friends, or I'm not meeting with family, or I don't go to parks, or whatever it is. I don't go to shops. But you put yourself into this little bubble, and now you finally can come out. Well, what's the first thing you're going to do? I'd be interested to hear anybody's opinion. I don't know what the first thing is. When it gets back to normal, what's the first thing that I want to do? I don't even know what the first thing is that I want to do. Do you have any ideas of what you do?
And the other question is whether or not will we still remember by then what normal was? Because I think if you do something for long enough, then it becomes the norm anyway, doesn't it? So
no, but I hope this never becomes the norm. I hope masks never become the norm. I mean, I hope. Oh, that's beautiful.
Oh, that's so a good one.
That is a good one. That's absolutely a good one. It's funny, like you go to places and 9 months ago, if I would have offered someone my hand, or they would offer me their hand, and I would have said, "I'm really sorry, I'm not shaking any hands," people would be really insulted. And even just a handshake is a normal gesture that's totally gone out. And cuddling your mom, I mean, what a special thought. That's just not. Yeah, I want to hug my grandkids when this is over. So whether you're going up one generation or down 1 or 2 generations, but it's the same thing. It's what we're craving most. Nobody's going to say, you know what, when this is over, I'm going to have the beer of all beers. Because if that's really what people come away from an ark, like you've been shielding for so long, and you come out of the ark and you go, I need a beer, or I want to really get plastered or stone, or I want a great party with all my friends in my back garden, then I don't know if Corona's taught you anything. And but really, there will be the answers that we want to have.
There will be that sense of relief, and I think that you saw it at the end of the Second World War with the baby boomers.
Absolutely.
That when a time of great crisis and stress is finally lifted, the natural human reaction is to go out and celebrate life in some ways, and hopefully we would at least get to that point. But
well, I wonder if there'll be a baby boomer generation after Corona. That might be an interesting thought, because I think people are worried to have children at the moment because of Corona, because of pregnancies, because of hospitals. I'm sure there are people that are holding off on that, and could very well be that even that might take on some kind of upward trajectory.
I think it's made routine tests in hospitals and all the other sort of stuff makes you think twice about it. Let's have a look at Jane. Good evening, Jane. But the ark was only kept safe because it was God's will that it survived.
Correct.
We can take all the safety measures we want, but the bottom line is it's in God's hands.
Oh, fully correct. I think I know a lot of people that have really shielded, et cetera, and then went out once because they had to go out and they caught COVID, and they sadly they passed away from that one time that they went out. And it's strange that I know other people, they were absolutely, they were your archetypical case. If that person, man or woman, were to get COVID, we knew it was curtains for them. And then yet I heard some of these people survived strangely. So it is very much in God's hands. You can create the ark, and it's not the wood and the nails that saved Noah because it doesn't make sense. Is that we just, we're in God's hands. I think never before in modern history has the entire world felt so much sort of out of control, and those who are believers in God's hands as well.
It's interesting what Clive says there. He says the problem is this will not end suddenly like a war does, and it may take a long time for it to go completely. So,
it's probably right.
So on that note, because really this is about sort of trying to build yourself some sort of structure that gets you through this, whether that structure is something that you're focusing on in terms of your learning or what you're reading or what you're involved in. But it's got to get you through now a long period of time that we're going to be going through this whole thing. So obviously these Sunday night things was a wonderful way of trying to be a little bit more normal and reach out to people. But Clive's right, this could drag on for a long time. So what do you think people should be doing in their daily lives in order to sort of give themselves the chance of survival?
Okay, so it's interesting. I was gonna take the ark conversation in one or two other ways, but I it's a good question, and I think that there's no one size fits all answer to that question, because it really depends on what your life is like. So if you're a single individual living by yourself, what you're going to have to do is going to be very, very different than a parent of children, than a grandparent who's hoping to see their children and bubbling with them or not bubbling with them. Everybody's going to have to do their thing differently. I don't think there's a one size fits all answer to that. I think what's important, and what I realized today from this conversation with Rabbi Walker, is that to try to have some kind of sense of normalcy in looking back at what it was that you did enjoy pre-corona and finding a way to make it work even in corona. Now, not everything is going to work, but if you enjoyed shopping, find a way maybe to go out shopping. If you enjoyed tea afternoons with your friends, so find a way to have a virtual tea afternoon. If you enjoy playing bridge, there are ways even to play bridge online, and I know many sort of senior citizens love a bridge afternoon with some tea and some coffee, and the problem is that they can't get together with their friends. Now, if somebody could give them the tools to be able to do that virtually, it would still change things around. Yes, we can't be in person, but I think we have to make it as good as it gets, and the more we focus on trying to make it better and trying to live our lives normally. I think also one of the other things is I've seen some people, and myself included in this one, there's one of the things that has had a big effect on people is what they eat and what they don't eat in corona. So I've seen either people have absolutely mushroomed, people have just gotten really, really large and heavy during corona, and some people have lost a lot of weight during corona because they've said, well, I finally get the chance to be on top of what I'm eating. I'm not going to simchas, I'm not going to kiddushim, I'm not going to weddings, I'm not going to anything. So I don't really have an excuse anymore to blame anybody else, because I can't even have somebody else's food in the office because it's not really safe to be eating other people's things, to be sticking your hand in somebody else's plate.
Yeah.
So I can't blame anybody else anymore for my weight except for myself. Whether it is people starting to exercise. Now I have the time to exercise, or I don't have the time to exercise, or I want to do different exercise. People are learning that they can adapt and they can create this arc of normalcy, whatever the arc is going to look like for you. And my guess is that not everybody had the same experience in the arc. I don't know if the lion and the giraffe and the tiger and the ant all had the same experience in the ark. My guess is that they didn't. So I think we all have different experiences in our ark, and we need to make our ark as livable as possible, as normal as possible and to be able to continue with our lives as is, as better as we can.
Gideon says we also have to have the chance right now to embrace the changes that have also enriched opportunity, connectivity, and learning. That is true. There are some things that we've learned, so a few tricks that we've learned during lockdown that will probably stay with us. Sunday Night Live, for instance. But there are parts. I mean, I've thought about this. How many meetings have you been to in the past that could have been a Zoom meeting? So it's very nice to sit down opposite a person and to be able to look into their eyes. But
it does stretch meetings out very long. It makes them much, much longer. I think if you have a Zoom meeting, you could probably get things done in half an hour, which face-to-face take an hour and a half.
Absolutely.
Just the schmoozing and the, it's also good, but sometimes it's just unnecessary. We all have things to do and we all want to get on with life and we all just want to move on. So let's stick to the point at hand. Let's get moving and let's keep going.
So going back to your thoughts on the Ark, you said you had another couple of
So I think I mean the Ark on the one hand, again, the idea of the Ark was on the one hand that your Ark is where you wish to be. Interesting. Could be. Sometimes. So that's why I wanted to come back to that as well. So I actually spoke about this today in at the wedding, and I think it sounds weird to think back now, but we had a children's Shabbaton, a youth Shabbaton in January. Remember we had that Shabbaton then? So we had a panel, and I think I spoke about it at the time as well. And one of the ideas that I believe that everybody needs to have or needs to create a situation, especially if you have a family, that your home is an ark for your family. That means I want that my house can be a safe haven for my kids or for my wife or for myself, really. And that no matter how bad the day has gone outside, and no matter how much people are up my back and how much people are complaining or moaning or whether people are happy or not happy in shul or whether my kids are being bullied or not bullied, they need to know that no matter what happens, when I come home, I'm safe. And the fact that your home needs to be that ark for your family, for them to be able to come back to and say, whatever is going on in my life, I always have this place to go back to. And it's a place where I have unwavering support and support that I'm going to get no matter what. If I've behaved in school, my parents will support me. If I've misbehaved in school, yes, my parents might give me a punishment, but they'll still support me in everything I want to do. And I found again and again, when you have children or when you have spouses that come from a home where they feel there's a support system behind them, and no matter what they want to do, there are people there rooting for them and wanting them to succeed, then most of those people succeed beyond the wildest imagination. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think it's very important for kids to certainly to have a sort of a safe haven whilst they're growing up, a bit of stability, an environment where they're not judged as they will be in the outside world.
They always will.
Yeah, and a place that, well, at least it's important for us here in this house. I don't know how it is in other people's houses, but the most important thing for us is that they can always feel that they can talk to us about anything, whether it's good or bad. And I think that for a lot of people, that's important. Whether
for a lot of people, they don't have that. And you know what? If you've had a bad day, and I know this is probably much more the olden style type of chinuch, of education, but I know people used to say, if I got a few straps from my teacher, if I came home and I told my parents, what would happen? You get another few from your dad.
Another few, yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember people used to say that? Oh, I'm not telling my parents why. Oh, my dad's just going to add to the total.
That's very true. These days, if you came home and said you got a few straps, they'd go in and beat the teacher up for you. Yeah.
Yeah. But now I never expected my dad to go in and be the teacher up for me. But you know what? I want my kids to feel that even if they've messed up in school and even if they got the strap in school, so to speak, they can still come back and say, look, I messed up, I misbehaved, I'll be better tomorrow. Or they can say, and my kids have done that, and at times they've been right and at times they've been wrong, we're feeling bullied by the teacher. We feel that the teacher is unfairly pulling us out on something when the entire class, and it does happen sometimes. I'm a teacher as well, and I know that sometimes you give certain kids a little bit more latitude than other kids. And, kids feel that. Just last week, I was doing somebody asked me to do them a favor. They had COVID and they said, can you please teach my lesson? I didn't really want to, but the school couldn't find anybody else. And I went in and one of the kids was really, getting my back up. And at one point or another, I let him know that, he's out of line.
Yeah.
And then somebody else did something out of line. And that guy looked straight at me and goes, aha. And you hear me or not willing to tell off? So I said, no, because I've told you off already, and he knows whatever I said to you counts for him as well. And I told him, I said, listen, you heard what I said to him. If you're going to misbehave, you'll get the same treatment. I'm not giving you preferential treatment, but I don't have to tell everybody off. I don't have to scream 6 times.
I have absolute respect for the heroes that are teachers and having to teach our little bubblers in school, because
they're not always the easiest.
The amount of Jewish kids, on the whole, we would all hope are brought up correctly. But when you hear some of the lip on these kids, and I think it's changed as well, I think it's a sign of modern times. Children are much more confident with what they say to adults than
absolutely.
I wouldn't have said half of the things when I was their age.
My wife always says that my kids, especially sitting at Shalat Shudas and shrubs, learn too much. They got too pally because they're sitting there and they're having these conversations with people that are 40 years older than them. And they're almost, I keep on saying to them, and we've had this disagreement. People have said, oh, just call me John, just using up a name. Yeah. And I said, please do me a favor. I know you want to be nice to my kids, but my kids need to learn respect and the fact you're not their peer. You could be their parent, you could be their grandparent. They cannot call you John because it's just not right. So they need to call you Uncle John. So I say, but I'm not an uncle. I know you're not an uncle. Just do me the favor and work with me on this one anyway. It's just worth doing it for the kids and for their education. But coming back to the topic that we were saying, I think whatever happens to your kids in school, your kids must know that I can come home and I can tell Dad, like you said, I can tell Daddy about it. And yeah, maybe he'll be disappointed, but I know he'll work with me on it. But if I know that if I come home and I tell my parents something, and instead of getting support from them, I'm going to get it over the head, the last place I'm going to come and the last person I'm going to come is to my parents. And my kids also know if they have questions, no matter what the questions are, you can come and you can ask Daddy and you can ask Mommy, no matter what the question is going to be. Because my wife says, I want my kids to know 2 things. Number 1, Daddy and Mommy are willing to deal with their questions. But number 2, I'm laughing at Phil's question.
We'll come to the questions after.
Number 1, that I want them to be able to go. But number 2, my wife said to me, the last place I want them to go to be getting important information is the wrong sources. Sometimes people go to their friends, especially teenagers, and they ask their friends, and the friends tell them such absolute rubbish. And they come home with all these preconceived notions. And then finally they say to you, well, isn't it X, Y, and Z? And you're like, where did you get that? And if you had opened up the channels of communication for your children to feel comfortable to talk to you and to ask you the question instead of asking their teenage friends, they probably would get a more truthful answer, the answer you want them to have, and maybe the outlook on life that you want them to have. And so therefore, the arc, part of creating that arc is, A, as you said, creating that environment where we said they're safe, B, where they feel they can talk to you, but C, also where they feel they can ask you questions, and you will deal with those questions respectfully and also answer them to the best of your ability. It's interesting. I don't know if you heard this. I heard on the radio, and I was so upset about this. In a way, I felt these parents had let the children down. These parents were home during Corona, and they were talking about the problem of the ice cream man coming past during Corona. So there's the ice cream van is going to say, they had played this annoying ding, 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 ding music. I'm not sure why they get such terrible music. Why they can't have like better music. We are in your area giving out ice creams of all sorts, like the scrap people. Anyway, so what happened basically was, and a few parents said this, they were all not embarrassed to say this on live radio. They said, oh, yeah, well, how did you deal with the fact that your kids constantly wanted ice cream? So I said, well, whenever the ice cream van drove past our house and it played that music, I told my kids that means they've run out of ice cream. Did you hear that?
I heard that. Not only did I hear that, one of my friends, one of my good friends, did exactly the same shtick with his kids. He said, when they play that music, it means that it's all gone.
Yeah. Now, if your kid is 3 or 4, he'll get it. But you know what? The problem with that is when your kid turns 7 and finds out actually that's not what it means. Or, the ice cream van, I think one of them said the ice cream van who plays that music means they have just stinky fish or something. I don't know. They made up something stupid. But when your kids get older and they realize actually daddy looked me straight in the face and lied to me, because they will catch you on that lie. That's a lie that's so easily found out. All they need to do is say to their friends, the ice cream van's going by, ding, 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 and my friend goes, oh, you want some ice cream? No, when it plays the music, it means they're out of ice cream. No, it doesn't, you idiot. Yeah. And then suddenly this kid comes home and goes, Daddy, have you been lying to me and telling me that when the ice cream man plays that music, actually it doesn't really mean they're out of ice cream?
We're gonna have a quick look at some of the comments because some of them focus on this. But let's just go back to where we were. Jane Johnson, I'll be very glad to see the flood subside and step out of my ark.
I look forward to that time, Jane.
Very true. Sheila Morris, well, I'm on my own in my ark, and I wish that I could have family and friends visiting 2 by 2.
I wish so too. Well, Sheila, can you not have people now in tier 2? I think as long as we're in tier 2, I think you're allowed to have people in your garden. I think you have to. Don't quote me on it, but I think that's the rule in tier 2.
Let's have a look what Michael says. Being able to go to shore, albeit in a different format, has provided an ark amidst the storm that we're in.
Yes, I wanted to come back to that. That was the other ark which I wanted to talk about, which is the moral ark. But I don't want to. We're not up to that yet. I'm now speaking about the ark, the protective ark.
No problem. Sheila Morris again. Baruch Hashem, we have phones and computers, so we can still have contact with the outside world. Zoom has been amazing, and of course, this Sunday Night Live. Very kind of you, Sheila. Jane, if you're on your own, can't you bubble with another household? So that's Sheila.
Correct.
So that Sheila then does answer that. Let's just skip to Sheila's answer. I do have a bubble with one family, but not with friends, and other members of the family have not been able to visit my brother and vice versa. It's very, very difficult for people.
It is very difficult because we should never family. People are on their own. I know my mother-in-law, so she only's got us, so she bubbles with us. But if she had more than one child living in town, how do you choose between your children even? It's almost an impossible situation.
Almost. Michael, returning to school has also been a savior too for the children and the parents. Never been so grateful now to the teachers. So we have a new profound admiration for teachers and the work that they do.
Yeah, but I think the school,
but also the function of school.
I think what Michael is saying in a way is almost that, the school is also sometimes the school is a terrible place for the kids to be, but sometimes the school is also a protective zone for the kids. I mean, my kids, okay, they will say that they had a great time when they were home. I don't know how great a time they had when they were home. I think they probably did much better. They are doing much better in school. They're seeing their peers. They're seeing their friends. They're getting together with them. It's just so much better and so much healthier for them. It's just not a 100%. It's not a healthy situation for them to be sort of constantly
100%. But if they were at home with an adult, you'd want it to be someone like Phil Morrison, who has a great question. What was Noah's family name? I'm fairly certain this is a joke.
So I don't know what the answer is. Phil, you got me.
Phil, give us the punchline to this joke. Jane goes on to say, even if communication lines are open, sometimes the difficulty is that a teen will do the opposite or believe the opposite of what a parent says, and simply because it's the parent that said it. It's a notoriously difficult period of time, isn't it, for a young adult growing up when they're getting to grips with hormones and new feelings that they've got and all sorts of behavioral issues that every single one of us has to negotiate when we're going through that phase of maturing.
Yeah, it's a different phase.
And also learning that the world isn't fair, and sometimes it's not nice, and sometimes there are things we have to do when we don't want to. It's a whole period of time where you're adjusting and your brain is still growing and still forming.
Yeah, but you learn a tremendous amount during that period. I think also to what Jane is saying, and maybe we've been very lucky that we've not had the issue, and we have 3 teenagers at home. But I think if you have clear lines of communication and your children really trust you, I hope they don't lose that trust suddenly because they turned 14. They might not come to you with as much as they did when they were 10, but I hope they don't sort of feel that they need to do the opposite of what you say just because.
Kids calling names. I wonder what the people call Noah. They called him the.
Asked you to Noah.
I think when he was building his ark, they called him the crazy guy that was building an ark, because don't forget, it takes a great amount of courage to stand there in the middle of a world that is going crazy, and to build an ark because God told you to, and you're warning everybody that the end of the world is coming. If somebody came up to you in the street tomorrow outside Shul or Shefa or wherever it was, and they said to you, Rabbi, the world is going to end, you dismiss them as being half crazy.
I think I would.
And it must have been no less hard for somebody to go through that.
I would say even if everybody stopped davening and I was the only person praying and I came to shul and wore tefillin and everybody walked in and goes, what in the world are you doing? I'd feel very strange and very odd as well. Well, we'll have to have a look at that, Michael. That's a good question.
Thank you, Michael.
Good point. We should look up exactly what the rules are or aren't.
Yeah, so we talked about different types of art and sort of.
Well, there was. I did want to continue on that theme a little bit and then move on to one other one. Okay. I think the other point I would say about this ark, and I know this might even be harder, is the ark being a place for spouses as well. So that I want to know that no matter what's going on in my life outside my home, when I come home, my wife is my rock and my support. And if she isn't, it makes my life a lot more difficult. And if she is, it makes my life all the more bearable. Because I know that no matter how much hassle I'm going to get, whether it is from a headmaster, from a parent of a child that I'm teaching, from one of my balamatim, from a president, from a warden, whoever it might be. Oh, cute. Okay. Smile, right?
That's perfect. That is perfect.
Absolutely. 2 thumbs up for that one. Well said, Jane. I like it. Yeah. No, so but I want to know as a spouse, whether a husband or a wife, and again, I appreciate not everybody here has a spouse, but I'm just saying that for those people that are, I want to know that my home is a place where I, as a husband, and my wife as a wife, can feel that they are unconditionally loved and unconditionally supported. Because sometimes, it's weird because we give all that love down to our kids and we create this safe haven for our kids, but then we don't create it for ourselves or for the people that are most important in our lives. And we don't create it either for ourselves or for our spouse. And that's a very strange thing to do, because just because my spouse is as old as I am and is not 13 or 15 and doesn't need as much propping up, doesn't mean they don't need this safe haven in their life.
I think it's the lesson for how we communicate with everybody. Yes, it's especially important when you come home and you communicate with your spouse or with your kids. I get to do a great deal of communicating with people every day. And you'd be amazed at how sometimes people forget to be civil when they're talking about what they want or how they need to get what they want or whatever it can be. But I think if we all take a little piece of this into our communication with other human beings, to let I don't know what it is, if it's pride or if it's just haughtiness or whatever it is that people have, and just communicate on the level with people and really try and empathize with them as much as possible, you'll go a lot further in life. and you won't have to shout half as much. Promise you.
Definitely. I think everybody wants to be understood and everybody wants to be heard. And if you can, if you can do that for people, so then they're already much more willing to hear your side of the argument as well. As long as if you're willing to hear what I have to say, then I'm willing to hear what you have to say. I had a lady once who gave me this whole spiel during Kiddush, and I said, "Yeah, you know what you're saying is actually corroborated by the Torah as well." She goes, "Well, I think the Torah is a misogynistic piece of work, and therefore I don't really want to hear what you have to say." And I was like, "Well, that ends the conversation then." I said, "Well, I wish you would
what a way to critique your favorite book."
All right, look, I don't mind. She can say whatever she wants to. She was a crazy relative from America. Somebody was making my mitzvah, so it wasn't one of our members. But I still remember at the time thinking to myself, "My gosh, I've never had anybody sort of just shut me down like that. I'd like to say something. No, what you have to say is rubbish. Thank you."
Yeah, well, you've got seriously. There's a lesson in that, and the lesson is that you don't need to live your life by belittling other people's beliefs or dismissing them or anything like that. You can have the same conversation, but and just keep it civil, just keep it nice. And I think if there's one thing we take out of all of this madness, is hopefully we start to treat each other with a little bit more respect. I hope so, anyway. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, because one of the storms that's going on out there, and I was speaking to the keyboard player at the wedding, and he said to me, he said, "What's going on in Israel now, and partially over here also, and it's happening in America as well. But specifically in Israel, the polarization between the left and the right, and the hatred between the Haredim and the non-Haredim about COVID and who's causing what, etc., etc." It's created this terrible storm, and I think we need to start creating arcs where we say, you know what, like you said, I might not agree with your point of view, but I'm not going to demonize you, because this whole demonizing is creating a storm, a terrible storm of hatred. I think we spoke about this quite a bit in the summer as well. If you remember, we spoke about
I think we did, yeah. How effectively anybody that thinks anything different to how you think is automatically the enemy. And that shouldn't be the way that life is lived.
Yeah.
Clive Moss-Barkley says something very interesting here. Our lives are as they are now are the new normal until things change again. As Jews, we need to feel that we're part of a larger community. The shul must try and keep us feeling that we are still part of a community and not alone in our private arcs. So actually, Clive, as it happens, this is a topic of conversation that the rabbi and I have discussed many times this week. And the issue is that, yes, you can build your own private arc. How do you get people out of those arcs eventually? The one of the things when it comes to shul life is that, and it's a big worry, and it's not just for our shul, but it's every synagogue of our type, especially modern Orthodox. When we talked about the Yomim Noraim and the people that you normally see in shul, I think one of the main topics of debate this year was how do we get those people engaged again? Because they've now learned that they can have effectively a year off with really good reason, really good justification, but nothing happened. Maybe they'll say to themselves, well, okay, that's all right. We missed it. Nothing happened. We still had a Yom Tov, but we just weren't there. And maybe that's the last that you'll see of them. So I think it's a challenge for shuls to stay connected with their congregants and to encourage them to come back as soon as is comfortable for them, but also possible for them. And it's something.
I think the other thing I would say is Clive did send me an email on Friday. I have not replied to your email yet, Clive, but I have read it, and I thought there were a lot of good points in it. And basically, what I did was I sent out this email about. I sent out a message on the WhatsApp group, and if anybody here is not on the WhatsApp group, please get in touch. You can be put on the WhatsApp group for the shul. Messages from the rabbi, and I sent out a message about the Havdalah, which sadly I missed yesterday. I logged on in shul and I saw it wasn't starting yet. And my wife said, come home as soon as you can. So I came home and I logged on again at home. By the time I find my phone, it had finished. So I missed it. Rodney, I'll send you a video to answer your question.
What's Rodney's question? When I see videos of Haredim literally fighting with the police in Israel, trying to get them to obey the rules, it makes me sick. How can I feel nicely about them?
So the answer to your question, Rodney, is I'll send you a few videos where the police have literally run over people in the streets, have taken innocent bystanders and bashed them straight into poles and broken teeth, etc., etc. The police have not acted in a very honorable way in Israel either, and they've been even Chavrei Knesset. Somebody sent me a video of a Chaver Knesset screaming at the minister for policing, saying that people are being beaten up not because they don't keep the rules, because they're non-from people. Many of them also don't keep the rules. They're being beaten up because of Haredim. And so the answer to your question, Rodney, is that there is an undercurrent going on over there. There's an undercurrent in New York going on as well, where Cuomo came out, and I don't know if any of you saw that, but he said there's a demographic, the Orthodox, and they don't keep anything. And many people turn around and said there are parts of the ultra-Orthodox that don't keep it, and you're right, but don't all tar us with the same brush. And there are plenty. I have 3 siblings that live in Israel that all keep the rules. I have a brother-in-law who's so scared, I have a brother-in-law who's so scared. No, the answer to your question is how can you feel nicely about them? I think the answer to your question is you feel nice. You have to feel about people. I think, sometimes, there are people that have preconceived notions and then they don't feel nicely about other people. I can't feel nicely about seeing police do that to other people either. And I feel very bad about the police. I don't think the Haredim have behaved properly, but I think some people who don't like Haredim from before, and that's come out even stronger in these pictures. But I'm not sure if they deserve the treatment that they have received for their civil disobedience. Nobody else has gotten that kind of treatment. My mother said she lives near Netanyahu's residence, where there are over 1,000 people demonstrating every night, making noise, etc., etc. Not one hair on their body has been touched. They're allowed to do whatever they want to. They demonstrate any they want to. They're demonstrating 12 o'clock at night, and not one person has even touched them. So I think there is a double standard going on. And for those people who don't see the double standard, they don't really care about it. So that's the answer to that. And maybe 2 wrongs don't make a right, but some wrongs are not being seen by the police in Israel, and that is not right either.
Kate Lurie, we are all in the same flood, but we all have different arcs. That's can also be true as well. And Jane just doesn't trust the media when it's anti-Jews, Haredim, or any other. Jane, I want to go back to something else that you said. You would really like to come back to shul, but our seat's in high in demand. Don't want to take someone else's seat. You can check this on a week-to-week basis if you wish. There is one man for sure. There's more than one man, but there's more than one person. But Ian Creek definitely is the one man with his finger on the pulse of how many seats are booked at any one time. And if anybody is thinking of coming back to shul but has questions about it, doesn't know how to book or whether there'll be availability, or there's another issue and you just want to run it by someone, Ian is extremely approachable. You can call him anytime. Ask him. You can even call the office and ask for his number, or we can also give it out as well. Phil Morrison has a very good point. Don't forget there are many different sects, and I think that's true. When you look at, particularly in New York as well, and also in parts of Israel, to say Haredim and to label everybody as one and the same is incorrect, and it shows an unsophisticated view of the situation, because there are many distinct different groups with their own practices and their own policies.
That's not to apologize for those people that are not keeping the rules. I must say the people that aren't keeping the rules are wrong and they should be keeping the rules. However, I think the police brutality that they've been subjected to is way out of proportion and much higher. It's like it's like the Black Lives Matter movement, where there are white people that are subjected to brutality from police officers as well, and other minorities, but black people seem to get it much more often than white people do. Does that mean, so does that mean that the police, they say two wrongs? Yeah, but there are plenty of Haredim who don't fight with the police, who are innocent and are getting beaten up by the police anyway. But those kind of
I think the overall comment, which I think bridges the position perhaps between, say, Rodney's view of it and everybody else's view of it, is that what's going on in Israel at the moment is probably the closest we've had to civil. I don't want to use the word war, but it's definitely civil unrest.
yes,
and it's a mixture of different things. It is not just social distancing, and it is not just this issue of corona. It is also, there's a lot of people that are upset with Netanyahu pre-corona. They think he's way outstayed his welcome. He's got some very, very staunch followers, and there are some people that will protest against them. I think at the moment it is a real tinderbox. It really is.
Yeah, but I want to come away from that and still speak about one more arc. But let's just get one or two more points, I think, that Joseph was making.
Joe Stone, good evening. What changes will Shrubs make to make it more more attractive, I suppose, for young people to come back to shul? Don't mean social distancing. So, Joe, really hot topic at the moment that is being discussed on all the executive back channels and discussions with the rabbi and the health and safety team and everything. We initially had a challenge, which was to make shul as safe as possible for people to come back. And we were focusing then on adults who obviously were not going to fall into the category of people shielding, but people that could take the risk effectively of coming back to shul. And how do we help those people as much as possible? And we ruled out any kind of involvement from anybody under the age of 12. We then started to see, okay, we can function, we can provide services, but we then also found out that the beating heart of our shuls absent, and we needed to be able to get those young families as well involved, and also to see those kids. There are certain times of the year where kids are an essential part of what we do, and to have Chagim without kids' involvement is very difficult. I know a lot of people said on Yom Kippur, although the Yom Kippur services were truly amazing, and the feedback that we've had this year has just been absolutely superb. But let's not forget that this time last year on Yom Kippur, we had something like 170 kids in the shul. So we're very much aware that the younger people and families need to have a place in shul, and we're doing what we can to provide for them. We've just started children's services, which must be booked in advance. Those are currently taking place on Shabbos afternoon. Anybody that needs more detail about this, get in touch with the office. They can tell you how to book. And so there are efforts, Joe, to get people involved. But we must not forget, we're on the brink of perhaps being told that we're going to be going up a tier to 3. We just need to be extremely careful and try and do things as carefully as possible. Sheila Morris, I've been going to shul and feel totally safe with how the shul has made this possible. Quite amazing. Thanks to everybody involved. Can we get back on topic, please? What can the shul do to maintain our Shabbos community, especially for those who are unable to come back to shul? So this is probably a nice segue into, I think you wanted to discuss the moral arc, if you like.
Well, yeah, okay. That wasn't really the point I was going to make, but I need to answer that as well. Let me mention the moral arc slightly, and then let's come back to Clive's question. I think the moral arc that I wanted to speak about as well is that there's a lot going on outside in the world, and some things we agree with, and some things as Jews we don't agree with, and that we need to create an arc for ourselves and say to ourselves, whether or not the rest of the world believes certain things, we as Jews don't, for many generations, we've sort of bucked the trend and done our own thing and not always bought into the youngest philosophy or the most recent philosophy. And I think creating an arc in our lives, one of the arcs that we need to create is a safety net that even though outside there's all sorts of crazy things going on, we still have a system of core beliefs and core morals that we're going to follow regardless of whether it is or it is not fashionable to be believing certain things. So that's, I think we're starting to run out of time. So I want to come back to what Clive has really asked, which I think is less of the topic, but I think it's still an important topic.
It's Clive's topic, though. That's important.
Yeah, but Clive did send me an email about it, and he deserves a reply for it as well. And he sent a few very good suggestions, and I think we need to sort of try to get on top of these suggestions and try as much as possible, to reach back out to people and say, well, if you can't come to us, maybe we can come to you. I think that's really what it is. And sometimes we need to be able to put our hands out of our ark and put it inside somebody else's, or be able to come into somebody else's ark. How we do that, whether it's by Zoom, or whether it is via phone, or whether it is, hopefully, please God, maybe soon even in-person visits, whatever it's going to be, whatever is legal, obviously. But, as a community, people are in that ark, but after a while, and Noah also had this, after a while, Noah felt like he was being, Noah felt like he was sort of being just left out. Can you imagine sort of what Noah must have felt like in that teva for an entire year? It's this floating boat. The rest of civilization has died, and he's there by himself. And I think the fact is that there are many people living in this ark on their own and looking towards the outside and looking out the window and seeing the storm, and they cannot see how in the world this storm is A, ever going to end, and B, how they're going to survive this storm intact with their mind, sort of with their mental health not going down the tube. So I'm wondering, Phil Morrison had a great idea about a drive around to people on Sunday. I think that'd be an interesting idea. I think we have to see what would or wouldn't be legal.
So I think in Clive's email there was a lot of suggestions as well, as to, I think in some cases we forgot about certain virtual things that we were doing. So there was the Minion, wasn't there, that people were logging on to.
Yes.
And now that people can come to Mignon, and that obviously the numbers of people logging into it have kind of dropped. But we need to do a drive to sort of increase those sort of numbers, because it's still extremely important for a lot of people.
Yeah. But I think Phil's idea is a very good idea also. I think if we can do that legally, I would love to be able to say, on a Sunday, we're going to visit 3 to 5 people, and we'll stay in a car, and they'll be in their front garden or something. And you can wave to them, you can say hello and speak for 5 or 10 minutes and move on to somebody else. And I think people will feel, that they've been visited. And even though, and again, only if it's legal. I'm not, I'm making that as a specific
prerequisite. Yeah.
That's a prerequisite. I'm not looking to break the law here, but if that is legal, if it is allowed, and again, I don't know even if it's allowed in tier 2, if it will be allowed in tier 3, but it's something that I think is a good idea. And then coming back to the ideas that Clive said as well, is being able to sort of come into people's lives in all sorts of ways. Because if people are home the whole time and they're not going out, and forgetting about shul, they're just not going out, then what are we trying to do for them, and what are we trying to provide them so that they feel on a daily, almost twice a week, 3 times a week, that they feel somebody's out there doing something for them, somebody out there cares for them, and somebody out there knows that they're still around. And many more things that we can do. And as Clive has had some really great suggestions, and my appeal to all of you who are listening tonight is, if you have any other suggestions, please be in touch, either with myself, with David, with Ian. We want to hear your suggestions. We want to try to implement them, and we want to create an ark for people, or be able to come on board to other people's arks, using the metaphor one way or another. We want to either be able to create that place of sanity for others, or if people have this place where they're feeling there's a storm going on outside and they're losing their sanity in where they are, that we can come in towards them virtually or physically, if it's allowed in law, and try to help them and to give them a feeling that they're not alone, that they aren't taken care of, that we as a community and as individuals care for the other people in our community. And if we can do that, then I think we, the lessons in 2020 of the ark and of the flood, etc., will be as relevant today as they've ever been.
Well, a fantastic way to end this evening's discussion. Thank you very much to Rabbi Eisenberg once again. And Joseph Stone has come in with some last minute. Listening to the women's voices would be a good start. Joe?
What are the women's voices? I've not heard any, but please let me know.
I don't think anybody has ignored the women's voices. If you feel any differently, feel free to contact me at any time. Okay, good evening. Everybody have a wonderful week. Stay safe. Any ideas, you know where to come.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. Look forward to next week.